"Please, don't touch me," the bleeding native woman cried. Widower Cowboy froze at what he found next. The snow carried silence that day, a silence so heavy it seemed the land itself had given up speaking. Pines bent under the weight of frost, their needles glistening like glass. The air was brittle, every breath caught and released in thin ribbons of white. Out there, beyond the ridges of the cowboys' land, the wind dragged across the plain with a voice hollow as a church bell. And through that voice came a trace, faint at first, a thin trail carved into the snow, red against white. He followed it, not because he was curious, but because he knew what blood and snow meant. It meant the living were somewhere near, fading, or else the dead had been dragged. He did not want to find either, but his boots carried him anyway, steady as the pull of winter's law. When he found her, she was curled in on herself, half buried, her body trembling like a bird's in the last gasp of flight. Her hair tangled with ice, strands plastered to a face pale with cold. The cloth clinging to her body was torn and soaked through, its once white linen stained deep. And when he knelt near, the words escaped her lips as if they were heavier than the snow pressing down. "Please don't touch me." He froze, breath thick in the air. The words did not come from fear of him, not fully. They carried a memory heavier than this moment, an echo of hands that had reached for her before. He saw that in her eyes, dark and wide, the way a wild horse watches a rope approach. The cowboy's name was Elias. 33 years had carved him into a man not eager for words, his life shaped by chores, weather, and grief. Once he had been young and hopeful, a husband who believed the world could be steady. But his wife's lungs had drowned her in sickness 2 winters past, leaving him with a silence that no company had dared to breach. He had let the world go on without him, finding a rhythm in work and quiet, until this blood trail pulled him from it. He did not reach for her then. He only shifted, lowering his weight into the snow, letting the crunch of his knees tell her he had stopped moving closer. His voice was low, worn smooth by years of speaking little. "You'll freeze out here." That was all. Not a promise, not a command, just a truth. Her eyes flickered, fighting both fear and exhaustion. She turned her face from him, as if even looking back carried risk. He waited. The wind pulled at his coat, whistled across the barren ridge. Time stretched, long enough that he almost believed she would rather die here than take his help. Then her body sagged, a surrender not of trust but of strength. Elias slid his coat from his shoulders. He moved slow, the way a man might ease near a spooked animal. He laid it over her without touch, letting its weight settle across her back. She did not fight it. She only closed her eyes. He did not take more than that, no arms, no lifting. Just coat and silence. Still, he knew she would not live if he left her. The snowstorm was sharpening, white walls building in the sky. His horse stood tethered a dozen yards back, steam curling from its nostrils. Elias waited again, then said quietly, "I'll carry you if I must, but I'd rather you choose it." The wind answered before she did. Finally, her lips parted, so faint he barely heard it. "Do not hurt me. I won't." That was all he gave her. When he lifted her, he did it as though cradling something already broken. Her body was light, weakened by hunger and blood loss, and she flinched even in unconsciousness. He kept his arms steady, his stride measured, whispering to the horse as he placed her across the saddle and mounted behind. The ride back was slow, snow biting at his beard, his gloves stiff with cold. Each time the horse stumbled, she gasped soft against his chest, and he steadied both her and the reins. It was not far, but the journey stretched long, the land wide with silence. Elias thought of his cabin ahead, a single-room shelter, fire waiting in its stones, walls worn but solid. He had not built it for 2, yet tonight it would have to hold more than him. When he brought her in, the fire was already smoldering. He laid her on the cot by the wall, close enough to catch its warmth. The flames lit the hollows of her face, every bruise and cut made stark by the glow. She stirred, murmuring, "Please," and the rest lost in sleep. Elias fetched water, tore linen into strips, set the kettle near the fire to heat. He did not ask permission. He worked in quiet, making ready. When she woke again, she tried to push his hand away, weak and shaking. "Don't." Her voice was sharper now, though her body betrayed it. Elias drew back. "You can do it yourself." Then he set the bandages near her hand, the bowl of water close. She stared at them, at him, confusion flickering across her face. Slowly, stiffly, she reached for the cloth, dipped it into the water, pressed it against her arm. The hiss of pain escaped her teeth. He did not step in until she faltered, cloth slipping from her fingers. Then he moved once more, taking the strip and finishing the task. His hands were rough, scarred by work, but his touch was steady. Not gentle, exactly. Gentle was too light a word. He was careful. Care carried more weight. The storm outside beat against the shutters. Inside, the fire's glow wrapped them both. She did not speak again, but her eyes watched him work, measuring each motion. By the time he finished binding her wounds, her body had eased enough to let sleep take her. Elias sat by the fire after, arms draped over his knees. He listened to the storm and her breathing, steady but shallow. He thought of his wife, the way she had once lain on that same cot, fever twisting her body until her breath no longer came. The memory cut, sharp as the wind outside, yet he did not move her from that bed. He left her there where warmth and survival had the best chance. The next day, light crept pale through the frosted window. She woke with a start, eyes darting, hand clutching at the blanket as though she'd forgotten where she was. Elias was already stoking the fire. "You're safe." His voice carried no weight beyond the words themselves. She did not answer, but her breathing slowed. Days slipped in their rhythm. He rose early, tended the horse, chopped wood. She remained by the fire, strength returning in fragments. He never touched her without cause, and when he did, he told her before. Gonna change the bandage. Gonna move the kettle. Simple warnings, enough to let her choose silence instead of fear. At first, she avoided his eyes. Then, one evening, when he handed her a cup of broth, she met them. Dark, steady, unflinching. "Thank you." It was the first word she gave him without tremor. He nodded, and that was all. On the third day, she asked, "Who are you?" "Elias." She seemed to roll the name across her tongue, tasting its weight. "Elias." Then she said no more. The cabin grew smaller as snow piled against its walls. Each night, wind clawed at the roof, but the fire kept them alive. She began to help in small ways, folding bandages, washing a pot, speaking a word or two more. He asked nothing of her. That seemed to draw her out more than questions could. One evening, while he sharpened a blade, she said, "They sold me." Her voice was hollow, a truth dropped into the room, like a stone, into still water. Elias did not look up, only waited. She continued, words breaking, sometimes stopping, then starting again. She told of men who saw her not as a person, but a thing, a burden traded. She told of hands that struck, of nights filled with terror, of running into snow because anything was better than staying. Her body shook as she spoke, but her eyes remained fixed on the fire, as though it alone could hold her upright. Elias did not interrupt. He let silence rest between her sentences, filling the gaps with the crackle of flame. When her voice faltered into nothing, he said only, "You made it here. That's something." She looked at him then, startled almost, as though she expected pity or judgment. But his words held neither. Only fact. "Something," he repeated, and turned back to the blade. That night, as snow softened outside, she slept deeper than before. She still murmured, "Don't touch me," but her body did not thrash. Elias sat by the fire again, the glow painting his face in half-light. He thought of promises unspoken, of the weight of keeping watch. The storm had not ended, but for the first time in years, he did not feel entirely alone. The days lengthened though the snow did not ease, and in the small cabin 2 lives bent toward each other in silence. Elias worked as he always had, chopping wood with patient rhythm, repairing the latch on the barn, clearing drifts that tried to swallow the path. She watched him from the doorway sometimes, her blanket wrapped tight, her breath curling like smoke. He never asked her to step beyond what she wished. Yet each day she took one step farther into his world, until her hands found small labors of their own, folding the cloths, stirring the stew, brushing down the horse when the cold allowed. Her name, when she finally gave it, was Iana. She spoke it as though it were fragile, as though she had carried it hidden under her ribs for too long. Elias repeated it only once, quiet, respectful. After that he kept it close like a prayer, never wasting it in careless talk. They learned to share the silence, not as strangers, but as those who knew it well. Sometimes she would hum low songs from her people, wordless, drifting into the firelight. Sometimes he would answer without knowing he did, a whistle slipping between his teeth as he mended tack. The cabin, once echoing with emptiness, began to sound like a place where life stirred. Yet the world beyond those walls did not forget them. When Elias rode into town for flour and salt, voices followed him, questions pressed sharp as knives. Why a native woman under his roof? What business had he bringing her there? Men smirked, women whispered. He did not answer. He loaded his supplies and left with jaw set tight, snow spraying under his horse's hooves. When he returned, Ayanna read the heaviness in his eyes. She asked nothing, but that night she gathered her few things, ready to leave. He caught her at the door, the storm clawing outside. His hand pressed against the wood before hers could open it. "Not tonight," he said. His voice was rough, not with anger but with something heavier, pleading hidden under stone. "If you walk out there now, you won't come back." "I will not shame you," she whispered, her shoulders trembling. "I will not have them spit your name." He shook his head. "I don't care what they spit." Her eyes lifted to his then, searching, measuring if the truth sat honest behind his words. What she saw made her hand slip from the latch. She set her bundle down. For the first time since she had come, she wept where he could see her, not hidden beneath blankets. Elias did not reach to hold her. He simply stoked the fire, letting it burn brighter as her shoulders shook. Winter pressed harsher, as if to test them both. One evening, a knock split the storm's howl. Elias opened the door to find two riders, faces he knew, men who carried more hunger than honor. They asked for shelter, eyes sliding past him to where Ayanna sat near the fire. Their grins told him everything. "We don't mean no trouble," one drawled. "Just cold out here. Figure your fire's warmer than the dark." Elias stood in the doorway, body filling the frame. "Not tonight. The storm will kill us," the other protested, snow caked in his beard. Elias's gaze hardened. "Then find another roof." Behind him, Ayanna's breath quickened. She whispered, so faint he almost missed it, "Please, not them." Elias heard the break in her voice, and it rooted his stance. The men shifted, one hand falling too near the butt of his pistol. "You won't keep her, not from us." The room thickened with the weight of choice. Elias's hand slid, slow as the turning of a clock, to the rifle propped by the wall. He lifted it steady, not pointing yet, only resting it in his arms as though it were part of him. "You will not harm her here." His words carried the gravity of stone. The men spat curses, but something in his eyes, grief, resolve, the unbending line of a man who had lost and would not lose again, forced them back. They turned into the storm, swallowed quick by white. The door slammed shut, the latch catching. Inside, only the fire roared, answering the thundering in both their chests. Ayanna sat frozen, her hands pressed tight to her mouth. Elias set the rifle down, its echo fading. She looked at him, and for the first time she did not see another man who might wound her. She saw a wall standing between her and the world's cruelty. Slowly, as though the act might break her, she reached across the space and touched his hand. Just a brush, feather-light, but her choice. He stilled, not daring to move, not daring to take more than was given. That night she did not whisper, "Don't touch me," in her sleep. She breathed deep, steady, curled beneath the blanket. Elias lay awake by the fire, watching the shadows play across the ceiling. For the first time in years, warmth filled more than his hearth. When dawn came, the storm had broken. The land stretched white and clean, untouched tracks waiting to be made. Ayanna stepped outside with him, the cold kissing her cheeks pink. She looked across the endless horizon, and her voice carried a strength he had not heard before. "I am not afraid anymore." Elias turned toward her, snow crunching under his boots. He said nothing, but the look in his eyes told her he had heard. Together they walked down the path, two figures etched against the wide plain, no longer strangers, no longer broken alone. And so the whisper that had once pleaded for distance became something else. It became the first stone of a home not built of timber or nails, but of trust and care. The kind of home no storm could tear apart. If this tale touched your heart, ride along with us. Subscribe for more Wild West stories by the fire.